This joke is for Courtney Ferriter, America's Jewish mother, another booktuber. Okay. How many Jewish mothers does it take to change a light bulb? Don't bother. I'll sit in the dark. I don't want to be a nuisance to anybody. Aloha, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. I'm Marilyn, or Maya, the baby boomer booktuber. And did I overdo it with my March mystery madness? Yes, I did. And I want to warn everyone first that I'm going to do a spoiler of the book by Ruth Ware, one by one. So I will let you know. I'm going to rant and I'm going to spoil. So I'll let you know if you haven't read the book. I'll let you know before I start. I'm going to do that at the end. So stay tuned. I really am having a wonderful time with March Mystery Madness. And I'm watching all the lives. And I'm watching and I'm making new friends. And I'm reading a lot. So let's get started because there's a lot. Okay, I DNF'd one book that I read back in the 80s. It's called The Nantucket Diet Murders, a Eugenia Potter mystery by Virginia Rich. This was a bestseller in the 80s. And I'm not sure exactly when it was. Okay, it was 1985. And it hasn't aged well. Plus I read it. And I really wasn't enjoying it, so I said, I have so many books, so you might like it. Like I said, it was a bestseller, and I heard on another channel that this was a really popular book that people went into bookstores to ask for. I wasn't liking it. Okay, now what did I read? Okay, I read, you might think I didn't read too much, but I did. When you add the other books beside the Agatha Christie. I have a lot of Agatha Christie books, but this was my favorite one, and it's called A Pocket Full of Rye. The best thing about the book that people say, but I don't agree with, is that the ending is superb. It's one of her masterpieces of surprise. I liked the whole book. The whole book was great. And I'll just give you a small blurb. In this ingeniously plotted Christie classic, a child's nursery rhyme holds 3 clues to find a cunning killer when a well-to-do household becomes infested with murder. The shocking thing about Rex Fortescue's murder was that the contemptible tycoon wasn't knocked off sooner. But when 2 less deserving souls fall prey to a killer, Miss Jane Marple feels the need to investigate. The only link appears to be buried in a not-so-innocent verse. So what's the rhyme or reason behind the playful hint? The answer draws the shrewd sleuth into the heart of a family secret and an increasingly menacing game that's anything but child's play. Now, Agatha Christie has written a lot of books with nursery rhymes, and I picked up one that I've never read before. And it's called 1, 2, Buckle My Shoe. And I finished it last night. Okay, 1, 2, Buckle My Shoe. Even the great detective Hercule Poirot harbored a deep and abiding fear of the dentist. So it was with some trepidation that he arrived at the celebrated Dr. Morley's surgery for a dental examination. But what neither of them knew was that only hours later, Poirot would be back to examine the dentist found dead in his own surgery. Turning to the other patients for answers, Poirot finds other darker questions. Now let me just say, I gave this 5 stars. And I'm only giving this 3 stars, which is very low for me for an Agatha Christie. I have to say that this was written in 1939, when Europe was going through, as we know, turmoil. And first let me warn you that it has the N-word in it. It refers to a Jewish woman as a Jewess, and it talks about what I think we know as the brown shirters, who have a funny salute, which I'm assuming are Nazis. But that's not what, of course that's what bothered me, but it's part of the times that, you know, that this was written in. And the person who did say the N-word was very detestable character. Be that as it may, I think we should go in knowing these things. But that's not what I didn't like about the book. The book, and I hate to say this for Agatha Christie, who's known for her plotting, it was convoluted. The beginning was great. I was really enjoying it. But it goes into so many, I mean, there's so many plot twists in this book that it made it really hard to understand what was going on. There's like doubles, you know, a woman who has a double or doesn't. There's finance, and the main character is a very high up in the finance world, and all these people go to the dentist, and like it said here, the dentist is murdered. I just didn't like the way how many plot twists were in it. It was just making me dizzy going back and forth. The ending was surprising. I think if I was trying, I could have got it, but I was sort of not liking the book already by the end. But I finished it, and I said I gave it 3 stars. The other 2 books that I read were, one was by Lucy Foley, and it was The Hunting Party. And I had a whole review here that I wanted to get into, but because of time constricts, and also because of the spoiler kind of review that I'm going to get, I'm going to save this for another day. I'll say that I gave it 2.5 to 3 stars. I have to check when I talk about it again. And I also read the book that I'm going to spoil, which is One by One. So that's 4 books that I read in about 2 weeks. And I just got my COVID vaccine yesterday, Friday, excuse me. Today is Sunday. And it really knocked me out. I got the Moderna, and I thought it was only going to knock you out with the 2nd dose, but this really knocked me out. So I was supposed to film yesterday, but be that as it may, let me talk about some books that you might be interested in for March Mystery Madness. And I haven't read them yet. And I might have talked about this, but I don't think I went into detail. And I'm going to read Dorothy L. Sayers, who's a contemporary of Agatha Christie. And this book is called Clouds of Witness. And I picked it up because it fit into the prompts of March Mystery Madness, which was weather, I think. And I'll read you a little bit of the back. Rustic, old, Riddlescale Lodge was a whimsy family retreat filled with country pleasures and the thrill of the hunt, until the game turned up human and quite dead. He lay among the chrysanthemums, wore slippers and a dinner jacket, and was Lord Peter's brother-in-law to be. His accused murderer was Whimsy's own brother, and if murder set all in the family wasn't enough to boggle the unflappable Lord Whimsy, perhaps a few twists of fate would be. A mysterious vanishing midnight letter from Egypt, a grieving fiancé with suitcase in hand, and a bullet destined for one very special Whimsy. So this sounds interesting, and I hope to get to it during this month. But if not, I'm going to get to it during 2021. I'm going to go back to 1, 2, Buckle My Shoe for another reason. There's a lot of contemptible characters in it as well that I didn't like, beside the murderer, beside all of the triggers. Just came to my mind. Then I have two Reginald Hill books. One I talked about, it's called Ruling Passion. And this was written, I used to read Reginald Hill in the 80s, and this was written in 73, The Ruling Passion. And I read about it. I already read the blurb, but he's a Yorkshire detective in the village of Thornton Lacey, and Detective Sergeant Peter Pascoe. And let me just tell you that this is called a Dalsey Pascoe mystery. And someone wrote in the comments last time, and I'm sorry, I forgot who you were, but that this was made into either a TV or a movie. I think they said a TV series, and it was really good. So I was very happy to read that, to hear that. So I'm definitely going, when I heard that, I picked up a new one called Bones and Silence, which is supposed to be one of his better books. So this says it's Hill's most ambitious Dalziel and Pascoe novel yet, and one whose humor, keenness, and insight place him securely in the company of Ruth Rendell and P.D. James. One woman dead and one threatening to die set Yorkshire's police superintendent Dalziel and Inspector Pascal on a chilling hunt for a killer and a potential suicide. A drunken Dalziel had witnessed the murder that others now insist was a tragic accident. Meanwhile, the letters of an anonymous woman say she plans to kill herself in a spectacular way unless Pascoe can find her first. It sounds interesting, so maybe I'll pick this one up before the other one. Another book is an Agatha Christie that sounds interesting and I haven't read, and it's called After the Funeral. You know, I'm not really 100% sure I haven't read it. I know I never read 1-2 Buckle My Shoe, but this one I'm not sure of. And the blurb says, when Richard Abernathy, the master of Enderby Hall, dies, his heirs assemble at the vast Victorian mansion to hear the reading of the will. It is then that his sister Cora comes out with an alarming thought. But he was murdered, wasn't he? When Cora herself is found brutally murdered to death the next day, let's say, the mystery ensues. So that sounds interesting, and I think I might have read this already. The other book that I'm excited to read, because it was very highly recommended to me by Lil in Lil's Vintage World, who I talk about a lot, and it's The Caribbean Mystery. And I got this from the library in very bad shape, and I'm thinking that I might, before I read it, I might buy a new copy, or at least a gently used copy of this. So basically the story takes place in the Golden Palm Resort of Saint Honoré, which is a made-up Caribbean island, and Miss Marple's nephew has paid for her trip because she went through some kind of illness and she's recuperating. And she's sitting on the lawn chairs or on the pool chairs, and she gets into a conversation with a Major Paglori, and he said that a man got away with murder a few times, and he was going to show her a picture of it, and then basically he's dead the next day, and Miss Marple thinks he's murdered, and she's probably right. So this was very highly recommended by more than one person, so that's why I'm thinking of buying it. And speaking of buying a book, I finally bought the book with the cover that I wanted. Actually, there's another cover, but it sort of gives away the plot. Anyway, it's called And Then There Were None. I'm sure everybody knows this story. It's a closed circle mystery, and the new covers have more of a closed circle where they are and in a resort of some kind. I'm not sure because I haven't read it. This is the cover that I'm most familiar with, but there's one cover that's even scarier than this. And I can't read this at night because I get nightmares, but I wanted my own copy, and I wanted it to be a copy with this cover on it. So I'll let you know after I read it again. Of course, we all know kind of how it ends, but I will let you know how my third reread goes with this. So that's the book I bought. Another Agatha Christie is Death in the Clouds, and this is a read-along that I was going to join with Paperback Junky. But when I saw that it was CDs, I ordered from the library the large print book because I haven't had a good time with audio yet. And I thought if I read the book while I do the audio, I might not make, sorry Paperback Junky, I might not make the read-along, but I definitely want to read it. And what it's about, it's a Poirot, and on an airplane bound for London from Paris, one of the 11 passengers is dead. The small red puncture wound on the woman's neck might have been accepted as a sting from a wasp, but luck is not on the killer's side. Hercule Poirot is aboard the plane and he discovers a thorn, typically used with a blowpipe, near the victim's feet. As he tackles the case, suspicion points in all directions, even back to Poirot, when the blowpipe is found tucked behind his very own seat. Can Poirot prevent the culprit from getting away with murder? This has a very good review, so I hope to read this before the end of March and maybe join in at the end of the read-along. Let me just mention a few other books that I might read. This is an older book by Ruth Rendell, or Rendell, that I used to love. She has these dark psychological mysteries that I'm not that much into, and this one, A Demon in My View, I'm not even going to talk about it because it's really out there. Basically, it's about a psychopath. And since I'm going to talk about this subject in my spoiler, it kind of put me off on reading this. But maybe I will. I talked about The Perfect Husband by Lisa Gardner. And so I think I'm not going to read this either this month, but I heard good things about Lisa Gardner. And what would you do if the man of your dreams hid the soul of a killer? So I'm going to read this in 2021, but not during March Mystery Madness. As Keep Her Safe by Sophie Hannah. Now, Sophie Hannah is very, very popular. I think she was even commissioned to do Agatha Christie renditions. And she's the most famous murder victim in America. What if she's not dead? So this sounds interesting and I might get to it, but no promises. This book is called Secret of Chimneys, and it's another Agatha Christie. And one thing about this that's special is it's written in 1925. So it's a really good pick for March of the Moderns, which my good friend on BookTube, Margaret Pinard, is celebrating this month. And let me just read you a little bit about it. A young drifter finds more than he bargained for when he agrees to deliver a parcel to an English country house. Little did Anthony Cade suspect that a simple errand on behalf of a friend would make him the centerpiece of a murderous international conspiracy. This is not my favorite type of trope. Agatha Christie kind of liked this trope, among others. But since it's written in 1925, it's really interesting to see how she changed or what she was thinking around that time. And like I said, March of the Moderns is written in the early 20th century. And there are very, very good modern books that are written in the 20th century. And I just finished reading Passing. And I'm not going to talk about it here because this is more of a mystery. But I have a lot of thoughts about Passing. So I'm going to read this, hopefully, to find out what her writing was like in the early 20s. The book I'm reading now I'm really enjoying, except for one thing, which I will tell you. It's called Lonesome Road, and it's a Miss Silver mystery, which was written about exactly the same time as the book that I was talking about before, 1-2 Buckle My Shoe, which is interesting. But I'm liking this so much more. So Miss Silver is a detective, and this woman goes to see her because she thinks someone's is trying to kill her. But I'm liking so much the ambience of this book. It's so perfect. And the Miss Silver mysteries are Patricia Wentworth is a wonderful writer, and I think she's not appreciated enough as much as like Agatha Christie, and I think she's her contemporary as well. And the thing that bothered me about it is, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I just turned it to the back and it was spoiled by New York Times. But not so much spoiled that I'm not going to read it. Let's just say that. The last book that I'm going to talk about that I might read is a cozy, and it's Rita Mae Brown and Sneaky Pie Brown, and it's called Cat of the Century. And all I'll say about that is that it takes a cat to write the perfect mystery. So I don't know if I've heard of Sneaky Pie Brown, but I haven't read this cozy series. But I have read other books by Rita Mae Brown. So if you know what I'm talking about, because I can't think of the titles offhand, just let me know. Okay, in 5 seconds, I will be spoiling a book. Okay, now for the rant. One by One by Ruth Ware. I had said previously that Ruth Ware and I have a complicated relationship. I'll say now that we're breaking up, but I'll go into that more. One by One, I hated it. I hated it so much. And let me tell you why. Okay, first of all, there's 2 narrators in the book. And you're going to find out who did it on the first page. Do you like that? If so, read it. Do you like endless talk about skiing? I don't. I don't ski, but maybe you do. Do you like characters that are not drawn well, that you can't tell one from another? Neither do I. Then don't read this book, because these characters are not only unlikable, but you can't tell one from the other. They're despicable, they're not drawn well, and even the one that was supposed to be the nicer person, I didn't even know who she was. Her name was Tiger. That's all I know. They had weird names. Okay. But that's not the worst thing about the book. The worst thing about the book is the depiction of mental illness and the way it is correlated unfairly with psychopathy. Okay, let me tell you. One of the 2 narrators is the killer. I figured it out, you know, first, second, third page. And she's, in some ways, you know, she had a terrible childhood, and this, you know, it's hinted. This happened to her, and that happened to her. And on the other hand, she's a psychopath. So should we forgive her or not? Let me just tell you, Ruth Ware, mental illness is usually, mostly not correlated with being a psychopath. And I know this. And what you're doing here is that you are hurting people with mental illness. People who think the mentally ill are psychopaths mostly. And I hate that. We have enough stigma against mental illness not to put that. We're talking about apples and oranges. Rotten apples with rotten oranges. Well, not rotten apples. Mental illness, which is mental illness, which a lot of us, I have a person close to me who has severe mental illness. He would never be a psychopath. It's not in him to be a psychopath. So by pairing those two things together, you're just adding to the stigma, the terrible stigma that still exists against the mentally ill. And I didn't like it. I also think the book is terrible. I think that Ruth Ware is a money machine right now, and she's faster and faster. Just get out the books as fast as possible. So I read it. I finished it. Why did I finish it? Okay, let me say the good thing. Ruth Ware is good on a sentence level. She writes well on a sentence level, and she also is very good with structure and pacing. Even though the end part where they're all skiing, and it was really boring to me, but you might find that interesting. But everything else is horrible about this book. Now, you might, okay, so that's my rant on One by One. So you might think, why did I pick up The Death of Mrs. Westaway, which is a book that came before One by One? Well, I was on like 30 on the list for this, but it came first, and this just came. And it was reviewed higher than One by One, and it's also large print, which I appreciate. But I don't know if I'm going to put myself through this again. Let me know in the comments if this is worth my time. Will I rant again about a book? I want to be happy. This is March Mystery Madness, but I can't help myself. When something bothers me, I'm going to rant about it. So I hope you like this video despite the spoilers. As I said in the spoiler video, some books needed to be spoiled, and this book really needed to be spoiled. One by One, not good. So please subscribe if you're new, and hit the notification bell, because I plan to talk more on March Mystery Madness, on all the good books that I'm reading, as well as hopefully not any bad ones, any other bad ones. And thank you so much for watching. I love you all. Aloha.